Travel to the core is a normal placement. Tattoos on my arm and a form of face.
All right, good morning, guys. I'm in a weird place today where I woke up and I was immediately followed by a policeman. And this, being black, you'd think I would be completely used to that, but actually it hasn't been a very long time. So I noticed him, but I decided right then and there to not adjust anything I was going to do that morning. I wasn't going to drive slower. I wasn't going to stop, stop halting my stops to stop signs and come to complete stops. I wasn't going to do that. I was going to do everything I normally do. And the cop followed me the whole way. All the way from almost my house to all the way here to Tattoo with Children podcast. And he didn't do anything. I broke like 20 laws, at least. I watched like 20 other people break like 40 laws. Didn't do a thing. And that's when it occurred to me. Not for the first time, but in a very illustrated point. The cops don't give a fuck no more, guys. We're all on our own.
Yeah, that's true.
But luckily, we got your back here at Tattoo with Children podcast, which is what you're listening to. This is Tattoo with Children. I am your host, Flavor Ray, in Seat A. Across from me in Seat B is my fellow criminal, Pirate Benjamin. And across from us both is the most morally upstanding, law-abiding citizen in the United States of America, CIO No Pain. Fellas, it feels good to be a gangster.
That's true.
Damn straight.
So, on my mind today, and I think on Ben's mind today, is the nature of the thing that binds us together. The fire in which we all burn. I am referring to time.
Yeah.
Time as a concept and time as a practical concern.
So what is time?
Ben, you may have asked the most important question in science that has not been answered. We don't know what time is directly, but we do know that whatever it is, it makes up the majority of what is reality.
We don't know what it is, but we know that it makes up the majority of reality.
If the way a physicist explained to me one time at Texas A&M, he says, if time is an elephant, then our universe is a flea on top of that elephant. Like literally, time is this massive concept that may or may not exist, but if it does exist, then it is most of everything. And if it does not exist, then it makes sense that none of us do either. So it's a deep question about what is time. We can't really interact with time directly. All we can really do is judge its effects.
So Google says the concept of time is self-evident.
Yeah, right. Okay.
In other words, an hour is a certain number of minutes, a day of hours, and a year of days, the passing of time.
Now, the thing that breaks down immediately for anybody that has done any science whatsoever is the fact that I can shorten a minute, I can lengthen a minute, I can...
How would you do? How do you go about doing that?
Go faster. Go faster, you get shorter.
That concept is the basis for the theory of relativity. Time is relative.
Time is completely relative. It's affected. Or if you don't want to go faster or slower, then just view it from a different angle.
Mm-hmm.
Just change your frame of reference, and automatically the whole frame of time changes as well.
But we do see time as being what a clock reads.
That is what we're measuring with our clocks is not time. Okay, what we're measuring with the clock is the changes that come about from the second order of thermodynamics. So
but let's not get into thermodynamics yet. So
okay.
As I read further down, it says that time is not absolute.
Correct.
So, in other words, common sense doesn't help here.
No. Common sense does not help you with time.
Not at all.
Okay. You have to get into you have to get into physics.
You have to get into physics in order to understand why you don't understand it.
Okay.
But physics does not have the answer.
Right, but physicists are very clear now that time is not certain.
Yes, that is very clear.
Okay, because of what you said earlier, which is you can slow it down or speed it up.
Yes.
Okay. And that, again, we're going back to Einstein's 1905 claim that space and time are inexplicably bound.
Correct.
Okay.
I mean, we're not going back to that. That's something that you can. Now, that is evident by this the evidence of how we get from point A to point B. Like, if I can tell you that the distance between here and my house is 15 minutes at 40 miles per hour, or I can tell you that it is 3 miles. Both of those things are directly interchangeable with one another, and that is the mark in physics for how things are related. If you can change one from the other, they're the same thing.
Okay, so then if I'm understanding you correctly, then if I'm understanding the theory correctly, then gravity affects both of those things.
Yes.
Okay, so
Gravity directly affects space and time.
okay, so then if we took a clock that's working perfectly well here on Earth
Yes.
and we moved it out of orbit, what would happen?
That if, depending on where you moved it, that clock would either slow down or speed up. If you move it into a gravity well, it'll slow down.
Oh, no. I'm saying move it out of the Earth's orbit.
So let's take a practical example of that.
Okay.
Right? GPS satellites. They have a clock in them. They
Okay.
have to.
Okay.
They have an atomic clock, kind of. Okay? And they move at great speeds around the Earth. Okay? The theory of relativity, the special relativity, was proven when they launched these satellites, right? Because they compared the way the clock recorded the passing of time in the satellites versus one on Earth. Okay, the one on Earth moves slower.
Okay.
They were able to prove that not only did it move slower in the exact amount that's predicted by the theory of relativity.
Okay, so if I understand correctly, then but they proved it, but you're saying essentially what they proved is that they launched a satellite. It had a physical clock on it.
Yes.
And that physical clock, when they brought it back, had gone 3 hours faster than the clock here on Earth.
It wasn't that much, but yes.
Yes.
It wasn't that much?
No,
No,
it's a
it
matter
was-
of matter of seconds or of microseconds.
Yeah,
difference.
the difference, because Earth's gravity well is very shallow. We got a very shallow gravity well here, luckily.
Okay, but wouldn't that argue against relativity?
How so?
In other words, if it's so gravity doesn't affect it that much, then, because I would think going 30,000 feet or 50,000 or 100,000 feet up in the air would make time pass exceptionally differently.
No, gravity isn't that strong of a force. It's one of the weakest forces in existence. So
I
it's
mean, my
just-
body doesn't agree with you, but okay.
Well, your body exists, which is, if gravity was as strong as the strong force, then your body wouldn't exist.
Right.
Okay. Okay, so what happens then if I go to the moon? If I take a clock to the moon
Yeah.
and I leave the clock on the moon for a year,
It will definitely.
what would the difference be when I bring the clock back? Roughly?
I would have to do calculations on that.
Yeah,
but
I know, but just give me a
Earth's-
Fenway Park.
Earth's gravity
It's
is
six
six
times.
times that of the moon, right? And so gravity
So-
would have but it still wouldn't be.
The difference would be oh god,
It's
this
a
back of the
formula
envelope
based
calculation.
upon gravity already has a certain amount of effect, like a coefficient on that, right? And so you're only affecting a very small portion of the equation. But you want real numbers?
Well,
Yeah,
you can run some real numbers. The interesting thing that's happening in my brain right now is y'all are both struggling to work with my completely unscientific question. Is I'm hearing Marvin Gaye's "Let's Get It On" in my head. What's going on with that?
Okay, here's the answer.
I'm not real positive.
A scientist has
Okay.
answered that though the velocity effect is not negligible, being about 2 orders of magnitude down from the gravity effect, time passes about 0.66 parts per billion faster on the moon than on Earth.
So 0.66
Parts per billion.
parts per billion. So you would, in order to get a year, it would take close to 500 million years of that clock being on the moon in order for it to gain a year.
So then, technically, how are you in an analogy? How can you speed up time? Because if I can take a clock to the moon,
If you would have
And-
to
and I
take it
can't-
into a gigantic gravity well in order to make it go significantly faster. I mean, sorry, you would have to in order to make time to go faster, you would have to go faster.
Yes.
Yes, you would have to go quicker.
There are 2 ways to affect the time. One is gravity, the other is speed.
Yeah,
Okay.
the velocity effect is the closer you get to the speed of light, the faster time will seem to go for you.
For you, the person who is traveling at that speed. Okay?
okay,
So, like, if you were to stand on a photon right now and speed through the universe, by the time you came off the photon, the universe would be over.
okay, I get that, but I think what I'm asking is the struggle with humans and the concept of time is that when you say, if I speed it up, it'll be different. So what common sense tells you is, well, there's only 2 ways to speed it up for a common man. And that is to get on a plane or to stay in a car. So for instance, neither of those things you're telling me would actually, so if I stayed in bed, okay, and you got on a plane, right, and traveled
Sure.
500 miles an hour and never got off that plane, and I stayed in bed for the next 50 years, and you stayed on that plane for the next 50 years, it got refueled in midair,
Sure,
no deterioration.
sure.
We would experience time the same, even though you're going 500 miles an hour faster than I am.
Yeah, the difference is
Correct.
the difference between the two of us. We're basically in the same frame.
Ray, even if you were traveling at the speed of light, right? From your perspective, you would experience time the same as he would experience. But relative to each other,
Yeah, our 2 different frames of reference would have massive differences.
But there's nothing, is there any physical object that is close to the speed of light?
a
currently-
a physical object close to the speed of light.
Yeah,
that's
and
not light.
Right.
the
Because you can't,
closest
a
thing
person
is
can't
Voyager.
there is no Voyager. Person can't get on a photon.
No,
that's impossible.
But no, of course, because it's virtually impossible to get close to the speed of light.
Okay. How close are we?
Not close.
Humans, I mean. So like,
Like,
when we
can
launch
probably-
rockets, when the
Looking it up
Chinese,
now.
We can get, I think, 20 times the speed of sound, something like that.
what is the difference between the speed of sound and the speed of light?
The
A lot?
speed, yeah. The speed of sound is like 380 meters per second. The speed of light is 3 times 10 to the 8 meters per second.
It's 186,000 meters per second.
Yeah.
Is the speed of
Light.
speed of light.
186,000 meters per second.
186,000
How
meters per
fast
second.
how fast is the best spaceship we have right now?
Okay, the Parker Solar Probe will reach speeds of 430,000 miles per hour.
But that's not anywhere close to what you said about the speed of light.
Not even remotely close, no.
Okay. All right. So I guess then, since so I think this is the disconnect for most people with time, right? Is that, in other words, ordinary people, which I consider myself to be, which is fairly unusual, that I consider myself to be an ordinary person.
Right.
I have a fucking crow tattooed on my neck.
Right, yeah. That's not what ordinary people do.
I'm the oldest of 8.
It's probably what ordinary people do. People probably do shit all the time.
Yeah,
But, yeah.
But I consider myself to be fairly ordinary, and I think what happens with people is that they question. In other words, they put things. Common sense is putting complicated matters into common aspects that they understand. So when you say, "Well, if you got on a bullet, Joe," if you stood on a bullet, and Joe says, "Well, you're a fucking idiot. I'm going to Taco Bell."
Right, I can't stand on a bullet.
Right.
Sure, you can.
Okay, so what Joe says though is he says, well, but if I got on a spaceship and flew to Mars,
Sure.
right? Which is let's pretend for the sake of my argument that that's a 100-year journey.
Sure.
That when I got to Mars,
Narrator, it's not.
I would be I would be 100 years old. Joe goes to Mars. He's 100 years old now.
Sure.
He believes, from common sense, that he would have gotten there at 150 Earth years.
Sure.
That's where the analogy breaks down. I understand that you're saying common sense doesn't help.
Well, it would entirely that would entirely work if he's going at the correct speed for that to work. If the distances and speed worked out, like that is definitely a plausible scenario.
But it's not. But what you're saying is, from the standpoint of a scientist or a physicist, that's not most likely the reality because we can't go that fast.
I don't. Well, we can't currently go that fast, to my knowledge. But we have plans, ideas for going much faster.
Sure.
That could work out. But that's a thing for time and technology to work out on their own. Like we still have to know those issues before we attempt, because otherwise we'll attempt to do something fantastic and run into a tremendous roadblock that we didn't consider. So we say, well, this guy should, when he gets to this planet, he should be, for him, time has passed for 100 years. For us, it's passed for 150. And then, one of our grandkids will contact him and, work on bringing him.
Say, yo, what's up?
Right. But instead, he gets there, he's been there for 100 years, and we've gone through 2,000 years. So, we had the equation wrong. In other words, for a practical standpoint, for a scientist and engineer, you have to be able to work these things out exactly. And so it's both an impractical concern for the common man, but a practical concern if that is something that you're working on.
All right. So when we come back from our break, I want to go more into the philosophical side of time.
Well, we're going to have to go slightly deeper into the what we were just talking about, because we haven't, the thing that were missed in there was, what are you measuring with your clock? We'll get to that in just a second.
Doesn't matter if you're cooler, hottest than the cortisol, president or lose a box. Doesn't matter if you're cooler, hottest than the cortisol, president or lose a box.
All right, we're back to Tattoo with Children. We're talking about the concept of time. Go ahead and I'll say yes. I have been trained in physics. The speed of light is 3 times 10 to the 8th meters per second. It is not 186,000 meters per second, 186,000 miles per second. That's I have the physics degree, and so like I should know that. Other people can make that mistake. It's not a big deal because it doesn't affect the thing that is important about time.
Okay.
The thing that's important about time, and this is probably the only thing that really matters to me about time, is its place in the second order of thermodynamics. And why do I say that? The second order of thermodynamics is the concept that it's not a concept actually. It's actually
It's a law.
It's a law. And that is the universe tends towards disorder. So if you have a ordered energy system, which is such as the Earth, for every moment in time that occurs, we tend to get a little less ordered. And we feel that effect by everything that happens around us. You know, a room that is warm gets colder. A cup of coffee that is hot gets colder. A person who is young gets older. Like, these are all things that happen due to the second order, the second law of thermodynamics. The problem is, and I did this myself, if you work out that equation from first principles,
Okay.
you go to first order, to second order, to third order. In the second order, you will notice that the time quotient in the second order works if it is positive or if it's negative.
Okay.
So what that means is, if you go forward in time, things become ordered. If you go backward in time, things become. You go forward in time, things become disordered. Go backward in time, things become less ordered. And there's nothing to stop it from going one way or the other way.
Okay.
The problem with that is we have no reason that it goes forward.
Okay.
They simply call it the time arrow,
Right.
where the universe started and time went that way. You say, well, why does it go that way? Because it wants to.
Okay.
Okay, so let's go the other way. What did it stop from going another way? Absolutely nothing stops you from going another way, except for the fact that the universe doesn't seem to want it.
Okay. So in other words, no matter what happens, you get older.
Right. No matter what happens, you get older, unless you get younger.
And that's what you're calling the arrow,
Yes.
is the fact that in the vast majority of people, they get older.
Right.
Okay.
The vast majority of systems tend to follow time's arrow
Right. Towards decay.
towards decay.
Okay.
And what we are measuring with our clocks is the rate of that disorder.
Okay.
We're measuring the will of the time arrow. Okay. So it's not a direct measurement of time,
Right.
because time doesn't care.
Right.
Okay. So
But couldn't you argue that time does care since it's only going one way?
time doesn't care.
Right.
Whatever has shot the time, because the time works both ways. Like, literally, in actuality, the truth is the time drops out of the equation altogether.
Okay.
Like, when you take it all the way through, time isn't even a factor in reality as far as your day to day.
Okay.
And so, the time doesn't mind anything. Like, you really can't measure it. Like, that's like trying to measure how you are feeling in this moment. Which moment? This moment? Which moment? This moment? Which moment? You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
Like,
Okay.
it's constantly moving, and so you're never in the present moment. You can't go to the past moment, and you can't go to the future moment.
Okay.
Time drops out. So we can't measure time directly. What we can measure is the state that thing was in just a moment ago.
Okay.
And so that's what your clock's doing.
Your clock is measuring the thing that was a moment ago.
Yes. So
Everything is relative in the measurements of time.
Yes. So the time arrow is going this direction, and we want to know how fast is that time arrow pushing us.
Okay.
And that's what our clock measures us, and we measure that by measuring the rate of decay.
Okay.
All right. But again, that does not mean to say that your clock has a direct connection to time as a concept or as a reality or as a thing. It's really just connected to thermodynamics. All right. So all that to say, if you think about this for too long, only two things happen. Either you decide that God exists, or you decide that you don't exist. Like
Okay.
those are really the only two things that that make any sense in our current knowledge.
Okay.
Because if God exists, then that is the time arrow.
Okay.
And if you don't exist, then that makes perfect sense as to why it works time works both directions.
It's kind of important to me, at least, to be reminded that the second law of thermodynamics states that entropy,
Yes, that is entropy.
this march towards chaos, essentially, is constant.
Yes.
If and only if all processes are reversible.
Yes.
It is an interesting piece of that law that it doesn't make any assumptions on whether or not the process is or is not reversible.
Yeah.
But it does say that if the process is not reversible, then entropy may not be constant.
Then entropy isn't a constant thing. And so like that's sort of like an out, but it works in the equation. Like all of those words actually are written in mathematics. And when it says if and only if, that is the if and only if in that statement is a square root, and t is under that square root.
So what do you, I guess from my perspective, I mean that I get a little bit better sense of a layman's idea of the law of thermodynamics as you stated it. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't change that from the perspective of the common man.
No, it doesn't.
He can feel a day that lasts a week. It feels like to his body this
Right.
day lasted a whole week.
Yeah.
Like we've all had that experience of one day feeling like 2 days.
Yes.
See, now you're kind of getting into the relationship between physical reality and our observation of it, our conscious mind's observation of reality.
Yeah, I think
You're
that's,
getting into the time filter is what I call it.
and I think that's where I wanted to go from the beginning, but I wanted to start there because I think it's a very interesting correlation to how we feel today. In other words, everyone has this, not everyone, I'm trying not to make broad statements, but I would say that the way I feel is that time is affecting how everyone I experience feels.
Sure.
And now everything is going so fast
Uh-huh.
comparatively to how fast it felt a year ago,
Uh-huh.
that it seems to be affecting the general mindset of the people around me.
All right, so when it comes to our time filters, the older that we get, the faster time seems to go. And it's not because time actually moves faster. It's because we have more time behind us. And the more time you get behind you, then the the tinier the time that you have in the current moment feels comparatively. Because you can remember 40 years ago, you know, at some point. So a day compared to 40 years isn't that much.
Okay, so let's put that in context of something I can understand. So let's say we gave adult Ben a sandbox that was 100 yards by 100 yards.
Okay.
Okay? And every day you gave me, every hour of every day, you gave me a pebble.
Okay.
Right?
Sure.
So in the beginning, right, I have a 100 by 100 yard by 100 yard sandbox, and you gave me a pebble. And it felt like a lot.
Right.
Because I'm walking around that sandbox and there's fucking nothing in it.
Right, yeah.
But you've given me a pebble.
Right.
Okay, so now I'm 40 years later, which is 365 days times 40.
Right.
Times 24
Times
hours.
24.
So there's a lot of goddamn rocks in my sandbox.
Yeah. Now
So
it's just a
now-
field of rocks.
But now, right, the whole thing's full of rocks, I would argue. Probably.
Right, yeah, it's
there's
full.
There's a very good chance that the whole thing's full.
Right.
And now you give me a pebble, and it doesn't feel like much.
Right. Now it's like
It-
it's just another fucking pebble and you throw it away and you don't even think about it anymore.
Right, I don't-
because it's another goddamn pebble.
I can't tell the difference between the one you gave me just now
And the one you gave me at the beginning.
and the one you gave me at the beginning. I don't know which. I don't know how they're different.
Right.
Okay, is that a good
That
analogy?
is that is a very good analogy actually.
Okay, and so now you're saying my experience is that the pebbles, you're giving me the pebbles faster.
So now you take one, because now you take one pebble, you're like, okay, I'm going to put this pebble right here in this spot. And then as soon as you figure out what spot to put it in, you put the pebble down. I'm like, all right, here's another pebble. Like, you just gave me a fucking pebble. I said, no, I gave you a pebble an hour ago. But, okay, now I got to put it down in this spot. I got to find a spot for you. Okay, find it right away. And then here's another pebble. That way you brought me, God damn it.
But in the
Wait an hour.
But in the beginning, I knew where each one was.
And so you were just waiting for pebbles.
Right, because I was just sitting there going like, when is this good? It's going to take me fucking forever.
It's going to take
You know, I've been here like 10 years, and I've only filled up a yard by a yard. But
Yeah.
now I've been here 40 years, and the whole damn thing's full all of a sudden.
Right.
Well, yes, but from my part, and maybe this is kind of where you're going. Look at your experience in receiving the pebble.
Okay.
Okay, in the beginning, right? You had a mission, you had a goal, you had something to accomplish, right?
Right.
And it was wide open to do so. So it didn't really matter where in that area you put the pebble.
It affected.
You could just put it down right away because there was so much room to put it. Right? Now, at 40 years later, you're going, keep my design, keep how I've organized these pebbles, right? I got to think about where to put it. You have to put a lot of thought into it. And your brain is now occupied by the experience for that time. So the pebble comes faster because your brain is occupied.
Okay.
You're distracted.
I don't disagree with you, but I think this highlights where I was going.
Yeah, I think it does.
So you just said something very different than I said, Mike. You said you were organizing it. You were thinking about it. You were maybe making a pattern with the rocks. Maybe some of the pebbles are darker, some of the pebbles are lighter, and you're organizing them in the sandbox so that when you're gone one day, your legacy is this intricate design and layering of pebbles within the sandbox. I am not running into a lot of people that would say that. What I am running into is people that are literally so upset by the experience, right? That they're not even walking over to receive the pebble anymore. And if they're forced to, they're tossing it over their shoulder and they don't care where it ends up.
That is what I was saying. I was saying what Ben was saying. That you literally get the pebble and you say, this is just a fucking rock. Why are you giving me more goddamn rocks? I got rocks.
I have plenty of
and you throw
rocks.
it down your feet.
I have plenty of time.
Right.
This is where it gets interesting because you made a very important distinction. What you're doing with your time at 40 is very different than what Ray is doing with his time at 40, and it's very different than what I'm doing with my time at 40. and it's very different than our perspective on what's happening.
Right. I mean, Einstein even illustrated this. He was famous for relating his very complex concepts in simple stories.
Right.
And really, what it boiled down to in his tales was that distraction, anticipation, these things that we do, they have an effect on how we perceive time. Okay, that at its essence, while there is an absolute way to affect time, for example, traveling to the nearest star system at 99.9% of the speed of light would take 2 weeks, but from Earth, it would be 4.5 years. Okay,
Right.
that every single day we have a greater effect on time through our own observation and experience of it. Okay? So for me, that really started building a question of how does our conscious mind, how does our consciousness interact with time?
Yeah.
It could be, honestly, that our consciousness, our thoughts are in fact a component of the time arrow. Like time moves forward because we need it to, because
Right.
that's what makes sense to us.
So there's a weird thing about this. If you just think about it on this level, okay. Isaac Newton is really honestly like the primary father of physical scale physics, like
Right, yeah.
large scale physics.
Yeah, it will.
Okay?
Yeah, macro scale physics.
And
That's
and,
Newton.
And then you had a bunch of other scientists, Einstein being one of the predominant ones, but quite a few more, right, after him.
Or during it, like there were many.
Yeah, during the time of World War II, quite a few in there that got into the real micro scale of physics, quantum mechanics, and quantum physics.
I mean, what we're really talking about is not Einstein, it's Planck. We're talking about Planck.
Yes, exactly. But the reason I bring that up is because if there is no explanation for the human experience in macro physics, in human consciousness, okay?
Say that one more time, because
There is no scientific explanation for what consciousness is and how it
Yes.
connects to the physical world in macro physics.
Indeed, that is true.
Okay? And so the question then becomes, for me, is there an explanation for human consciousness in the quantum world?
There have been some theories. It's a little far afield. Like in macro physics, trying to prove the human consciousness is impossible, and therefore for many physicists or scientists or anybody really, even today, they would say that it doesn't exist.
Okay, but let's just. I'm not trying to derail you guys, but what I want to go back to for a second is the sandbox, the pebble box that I created.
Yeah.
So, from your perspective, Ray, why do you feel? I'm asking you personally, not as a scientist or a
I'm with you.
physicist.
Hit me.
Why do you feel that because you have all these pebbles, the pebble you're receiving now is less important?
I don't feel that way in general. When I get my fresh pebble, I like to take a look at it and determine if I can do anything with it. Like this, like I get the pebble and I'm like, all right, what do I need to do with this pebble right now? Is it a pebble that I can use for my enjoyment? Is it a pebble I can use for entertainment? Or is it a pebble that I have to give to another person because they need a pebble right away? Mm-hmm. They need to, they have something doing and we got to link our pebbles together. Is it a pebble that I've been waiting on because it is the correct shape that I can actually do this thing with? Like, it's each hour that I get is an important hour. Sometimes I'll have to for earthly reasons, I have to sleep.
Right.
And then I get up, and then there are, a little collection of pebbles that have already been placed. And I'm like, damn, if I'd have been awake and saw that pebble, I could have done something with that one right away. Now I got to wait on the next pebble. That's that shape again. It's I never feel that I have enough of those hours. I never feel that I'm doing enough with them when I get them. So I'm always in a state of either feeling like I'm wasting my time or that I'm utilizing my time effectively, and I have to do that more often. And so I'm either doing or wasting, in my own opinion. Like I don't have another mode of living. If I'm not doing, I'm definitely wasting. That's how I think of it. And like I'm not sure that's healthy. I'm not sure that's correct at all, but it's definitely how I feel.
Interesting.
How about yourself, man? How do you, when I give you that pebble, what happens?
I don't know that I've ever put a whole lot of thought into it. So years ago, when I was kind of at a formidable age, as far as what I mean by formidable, I was forming. That's a weird way to use the word, but I was forming. When I was forming my thoughts about the world, so what I would describe as late adolescence. My dad was going through midlife.
Correct.
Now, let's take a quick break and come back to this story.
Okay.
I carry the club like Neanderthal. The choir got everybody dancing, dog. Yell on that X, I'm a sentinel, standing tall. No time to stand still, please don't meander, dog. They're throwing jazz at me to challenge my rap savvy. I sway like Callaway, I'm ahead, you'll never catch me. Ain't worried about it.
All right, guys, we're going to come back to Ben's story on midlife and what that means for time on the next podcast. We just ran into a thing, so we're going to close with you. This has been Tattoo with Children. I've been your host, Flavor Ray. You can find Tattoo with Children on IG at Tattoo with Children, on Facebook at Tattoo with Children. You can find us on Twitter at Tattooed With. You can find us on TikTok at Tattoo with Children. I got the whole word in, guys. Yeah.
Heck yeah.
Nice.
And you can find Pirate Ben on Black Crow Brother on IG and at Black Spot Tattoo Company on IG. You can find Pirate Ben on Twitter at Ben, what is your Twitter?
I think it's Black Crow Kage, but
Yes.
there might be some
Black Crow
periods in
Kage.
there.
No, there's no period in that. Your periods are on TikTok. On TikTok, it's black.crow.kage on
Hokage. Block.crow.hokage.
Hokage on TikTok. You can find me on Twitter at Hunter Vanguard, one word, Hunter Vanguard. You can find me on IG at Madara Shadow. You can find Mike Payne on IG at CIO Payne and at Payne.points on IG. That is Payne, Payne. All right, guys, we're going to continue this very interesting discussion later on.
We were born to bring it back, but it's more than basic. Cause a portion of its rap at the core is ancient. It's supported like a pack of some more observations are important, like the fact that we're bored of fake shit. More creative, have the floor, so take it. Travel to the core.